Okay, now you can hear me. I hope. It's a gray day. No sun. Should we turn off on the lights? But it will not change. We should be eco-friendly, so turn off, and later or sooner, like in half an hour, it will be night anyway. I mean, it's really, you cannot even see it from here. Can it? Yeah, you see, it's really so. I just wanted to pop in to work a little bit on a game, because we didn't work for like a few days now. But what I'm doing beside job for like client, to be honest, I'm reading again and again that Bioshock all over the place, like internet, and also from the book, which is always around. So it's an endless treasure where you can find like inspiration for your own stuff. Like what I'm looking for usually are environments, but also like a book, Rapture. It's masterpiece. I wanted to talk a little bit about it while we're working on the game. So the book that I'm mentioning, and you can get it for free. I didn't even know that it exists. It's Bioshock from Rapture to infinite. I open it again, and it's open here already. So we are on page 19. So you can get it. Sorry, the from Rapture to Columbia. Because Infinite, I don't like it, and I mean there is good parts, really. I like it in some way, but compare it to the other two Bioshocks, it's nothing. I mean nothing. It's not that powerful. And there we got this book, and I wanted to talk about this one, which you can. Is it? Yeah. I didn't know it's Kickstarter. You can get it for free, actually. Really. And we have it here. The whole book. Why it's loading still? The whole book. Because, yeah, with Kindle there is a free first time like promo, first month. But besides that book, this is the one I talked about. This is like a novel, and it's amazing. I need to read it again, really. And this is the one that I wanted. Also this. I don't know how to get it, really. I will need to check it. Let's just. I'm obsessed, and we got one more that small one, art. This book, where is it? Art Deco, the small one. This one. We get that one also. Get the price, but it's maybe the bigger one. There are different versions, so I didn't know. I thought this is much bigger. When I got it was like really small book. Oh no, this is Bioshock 2. Okay, because it's like the similar, but this one from Bioshock 1. That I would like to have. Oh, you see, it's dark already. Oh man. Oh god. I want that one. How to buy it, how to get it, and how it looks. But you know, when I'm thinking about buying it, maybe music is high, no? For that price, we could print 3-hour books. So it's better to print our books than buy. But it's so. Oh man. Yeah, we will probably buy it. I mean, if it's 18. Oh, he's from US, and is there like let's see here near us, Europe. Like this one. Ah, he's also in he's also in US. What is this? Shop worldwide with confidence, including detailed tracking and hassle-free returns. So it will be shipping and handling $90. I would like to buy it, really. I mean, I'm there is one of 3 books that I would like to have from Bioshock. So I just got one today for free. I showed you how, and I'm reading that, and we will be listening that soon, and it's interesting. But you know, this is not this one. We don't need actually this one. I mean, it's collector edition, and is the same Brady Game stuff guide like that we have here at the table. So, but we don't have the first one, and I would like to see how it look like inside. So we're not talking, the title is Bioshock books. Books, magazines. What is called? It's a magazine. It's series guide, book guides. For me, it's a book. Really. For me, it's a book. Let's state. I mean. So this is the price. I think it's good, but let's see how it looks like inside. If you type, so yeah, now you can see what I'm doing during the day. I mean, besides the other stuff, we'll do some music maybe later, but this is so addictive to get into that world, because there is there is philosophy of Ayn Rand, and the main character, of course from Bioshock, is connected with Ayn Rand, which is creator of Atlas Shrugged, which inspired Ken Levine to make Bioshock, and it is all connected. And if you go, I mean, Andrew Ryan from Bioshock has like her, or she is born in Russia. In the game, he the character that I mentioned, born in Belarus, so it's all connected with her philosophy, and through the main, if we can say, there is few main characters, but the one that I mentioned, and I just forgot because too much names, and I'm not good with names to mentioning. I said Ayn Rand and Andrew Ryan. So many names in Bioshock, and I'm not good with names. But let's see if we can see how it looks like review or Brady Games. Let's see how Brady Games Bioshock review. Brady Games. So that's what I'm reading. This is limited edition. Giveaway. This guy is giving away his copy. So there are so much material, and this is audiobook that you can listen for free also. The original Rapture book you can listen for free here. And this is, yeah, the guy, I mean, that's the voice, that's the copy that they're selling, and there you can find for free. Not sure if it's legal, but it's there. What is this guy giving? Aha, just an art, okay. But how to see really how it looks inside? Nope. Uh-huh. So again, we got here, so there is I will try to find it after. I'm really curious to... So yeah, it's like... warm but readable and intact if dust jacket. What? I don't want it to ship from United States, but yeah. How it looks. Sell this book. How it looks inside. I forgot. Let me check. We have here. Always forgetting where I'm keeping those books. Here. But this is the art book. This is not the one from that we saw. This is the other, and there should be one more. okay. It's really... So you see, it's grabbed my attention, and I can now look about it for like hours. But that's the thing, because from that we'll create our stuff, and we will go to do that now. And let's try. Waiting just something to open, but yeah, we're here where we left off, and yeah, really need to focus and move forward, because it's great to drift away in ideas, but we must be like productive.
Through audio recordings spread throughout the levels, Levine presents the player with the opportunity to follow the progress of the storyline. The designer repeats and deepens his attempt at alternative narration in Bioshock. It is a good way to show the game's universe instead of explaining it, a nuance that is fully realized in the video game. Historically, games start with an overview of the protagonist, his quest and challenges. Then, through small sketches appearing in key locations, the adventure unfolds. Bioshock steps away from this blueprint and shows more depth. Levine prefers to narrate several snapshots of life. As the player collects these moments and reorders the events, the narrative puzzle is revealed. The game's universe is extremely detailed, without ever infringing upon the interaction. Additionally, the player who wouldn't be interested in dramatic plot elements can concentrate solely on the action, uninterrupted. Although this type of approach seems to have become widespread, Levine remains strict. He reaffirms that the mental control has finally stopped. Ken Levine wanted to make the player understand retrospectively that he had been manipulated the whole time, before giving him the opportunity to truly control his fate. Inspired by Valve's work on Half-Life, Irrational Games started addressing the issue of narration with System Shock 2. Through audio recordings spread throughout the levels, Levine presents the player with the opportunity to follow the progress of the storyline. The designer repeats and deepens his attempt at alternative narration in Bioshock. It is a good way to show the game's universe instead of explaining it, a nuance that is fully realized in the video game. Historically, games start with an overview of the protagonist, his quest and challenges. Then, through small sketches appearing in key locations, the adventure unfolds. Bioshock steps away from this blueprint and shows more depth. Levine prefers to narrate several snapshots of life. As the player collects these moments and reorders the events, the narrative puzzle is revealed. The game's universe is extremely detailed, without ever infringing upon the interaction. Additionally, the player who wouldn't be interested in dramatic plot elements can concentrate solely on the action, uninterrupted. Although this type of approach seems to have become widespread, Levine remains strict. He reaffirms that the industry overall is still too lenient and lazy when it comes to narration, too often choosing the easy, less interesting solution and producing long, tedious cutscenes. But to understand the choice of a narration written into the gameplay, in the environment and the architecture, we have to look way back to the origins of video games, the mid-1970s, when genius American students coded the first RPG prototypes on their university's primary machines. Eruption. When video games exploded in the early 1970s, they first used simple 2D formats, sprites moving throughout minimalist fixed scenery.
With no real perspective due to technical constraints. Pong, Pac-Man and many others, while held to these limitations, brought immediate progressive enjoyment. At the time, there was a near simultaneous emergence at American universities of several phenomena. First was mental control has finally stopped. Ken Levine wanted to make the player understand retrospectively that he had been manipulated the whole time, before giving him the opportunity to truly control his fate. Inspired by Valve's work on Half-Life Irrational Game, through audio the designer repeats and deepens this attempt at alternative narration in Bioshock. It is a good way to show the game's universe instead of explaining it, a nuance that is fully realized in the video game. Historically, games start with an overview of the protagonist, his quest and challenges. Games start with an overview of the protagonist, his quest.
Games start with an overview of
Games start
with an overview of the protagonist. Games start with an overview of the protagonist. Games start with an overview of the protagonist, his quests and challenges. Then, through small sketches appearing in key locations, the adventure unfolds. Bioshock steps away from this blueprint and shows more depth. Levine prefers to narrate several snapshots of life. As the player collects these moments and reorders the events, the narrative puzzle is revealed. The game's one universe is extremely detailed, without ever infringing upon the interaction. Additionally, the player who wouldn't be interested in dramatic plot elements can concentrate solely on the action, uninterrupted. Although this type of approach seems to have become widespread, Levine remains strict. He reaffirms that the industry overall is still too lenient and lazy when it comes to narration, too often choosing the easy, less interesting solution and producing long, tedious cutscenes. But to understand the choice of a narration written into the gameplay, in the environment and the architecture, we have to look way back to the origins of video games, the mid-1970s. When genius American students coded the first RPG prototypes on the university's primary machines. Eruption. Sync to furthest page. When video games exploded in the early one, they first used simple 2D formats, sprites M. Go to page throughout minimalist fixed scenery. Why? Legal notices real perspective due to technical consti.
Evet, çok basit tabi.
Pong, Pac-Man and many others, held to these limitations, brought immediate, regressive enjoyment. At the time, there was a near-simultaneous emergence at American universities of several phenomena. First was the arrival of tabletop role-playing games with Dungeons & Dragons (D&D) by Gary Gygax and Dave Arneson in late January 1974, for which an original version was tested in strategy game clubs on campuses and during wargamer conventions. Next there was the appearance of the first mainframe computer video games, played on a centralized network linking dozens of terminals to a large central computer, often within a single room. On these PDP-10s and Plato systems came the sudden release of textual adventure games, such as Colossal Cave Adventure from William Crowther in 1976. The first prototype RPGs similar to D&D, such as Dungeon from Don Daglow and D&D from Gary Wisenhunt and Ray Wood, both in 1975. And first-person games such as Spasm, a 1974 Proto-Elite, Maze War, 1975, a hide-and-seek maze game, and Moria, 1975, an RPG allowing 10 players to play together. Around this time Ken Levine, who was still a teenager, discovered Super. Think to furthest page. Star Trek on PDP-10. This was a non-C strategy game that shaped the future DESI. Go to page preferences for intellectual games. Now H. Legal notices swears by XCOM and Company of Heroes 2. Kindle Store. Arcade has not been outdone, and Futu shooting games such as Starhawk 1977, and Tail Gunner from Cinematronics 1979. A spin-off of Super Star Trek, emerged before consoles and PCs became leaders with games such as Star Raiders on Atari 400 and 800 in 1979. At the time, it was normal to draw inspiration from competitors and earlier games, especially at universities. But this form of representation slowly started to make a place for itself in 1980 with Battlezones with a maneuverable tank and Destructible surroundings, and then in 1983 with Star Wars, with 3D wireframe graphics, as the journalists of the time called them, calculated in real time. Cross-genre. While arcade games came first in real-time 3D, PCs followed, especially with RPGs. During the 1980s, the genre took hold of this first-person perspective and applied it in a whole new way. With Akalaba, one of the first RPGs marketed for Apple II in 1979, Richard Garriott calls Broad British, combined a schematic 2D. Sync to furthest page. World view called top-down perspective, subjective view, when it came to clearance. Go to page Dungeons. During this decade, all RPGs CC. Legal notices out on computers, and some JRPGs qual. Kindle Store. More or less the same formula, with a few no exceptions. Wizardry, Zertec, 1981, The Bard's Tale, Interplay, 1985, Advanced Dungeons and Dragons. Treasure of Tarman on Intellivision, APH Technological Consulting, 1983, and Might and Magic, New World Computing, 1986, used only a subjective view. In all of these cases, turn-based combat and case-based movements predominate, for technical reasons. However, there were already the beginnings of a hybridization of these genres, in particular in the works of Mike Singleton. For example, The Lords of Midnight on ZX Spectrum, 1984, available today on iOS, offers a total experience between a multi-character textual adventure and strategy game, while always showing a panorama of the locations surrounding the player. It almost makes you dizzy. As for RPGs, there was a parallel emergence of another school, that of Elite. The first world that was fully opened in 3D and procedural creation. While it is impossible here to go back to the development of the game from David Braben and Ian Bell, its release on BBC Micro in 1984 shook up the norms by pushing programmers to have more technological ingenuity to create open worlds that were even more detailed. The best example is Sync to furthest page. Still the Mercenary trilogy from Novagen Soft between 1985 and 1992, a series of adve. Go to page games in which the player's avatar moves BJ. Legal notices by ship, then Planet to Planet, before BECC. Kindle Store. Involved in the actual course of these stars. Headed towards adventure. Starting in 1986, the taste for first-person real-time adventure peaked more than ever before. There were several reasons for this trend. First, this was the era when the first graphics engines with polygonal 3D, or full surface, emerged. From and strategy game, while always showing a panorama of the locations surrounding the player. It almost makes you dizzy. As for RPGs, there was a parallel emergence of another school, that of Elite, the first world that was fully opened in 3D and procedural creation. While it is impossible here to go back to the development of the game from David Braben and Ian Bell, its release on BBC Micro in 1984 shook up the norms by pushing programmers to have more technological ingenuity to create open worlds that were even more detailed. The best example is still the Mercenary trilogy from Novagen Software, between 1985 and 1992. A series of adventure games in which the player's avatar moves by foot, by ship, then planet to planet, before becoming involved in the actual course of these stars. Headed towards adventure. Starting in 1986, the taste for first-person real-time adventure peaked more than ever before. There were several reasons for this trend. First, this was the era when the first graphics engines with polygonal 3D, or full surface, emerged. From 1986 to 1992, the developer Incentive Software created several games with its proprietary engine, Freescape, Driller, Total Eclipse. And other productions confirmed that real-time 3D could represent features other than space battles, such as pyramids and trap castles, creating a unity of space in the games. With multiple formats, Driller was available on both Spectrum and Amiga. The developer also proved that such technology can be portable between very different machines, without having to entirely reprogram it. Other productions show that this representation allows for new gameplays. Cholo, Solid Image, 1986, integrates computer hacking, allowing the player to control several drones with various abilities or to use surveillance cameras. Numerous publishers and writers followed this path. The Colony, Mindscape, 1988, and Infestation, Psygnosis, 1990, use humans, alone and lost on space stations. With real-time first-person polygonal 3D and a brilliant use of sound, such as the breathing of the protagonist in Infestation, which echoes in the speakers, it was almost like survival horror before its time, with Alone in the Dark not coming out until 1992. Finally, there was a revolution that left a permanent mark on a wide range of adventure games, Dungeon Master, in 1987. This game from FTL Games takes place in real time, manages the character's hunger and thirst and allows immediate grabbing of nearby items. There is, of course, no calculated 3D here, but rather additions and noticeable improvements in the genre, such as creatures that move repeatedly at each level, attracted by sound or light. We won't talk about a Bioshock-type ecosystem, where enemies don't interact with each other, but rather interesting early signs. As until then RPGs had settled for random meetings. FTL's game was so successful that it was copied by most of the leaders of the time, such as the 3 installments of Eye of the Beholder, Westwood Studios, 1990 to 1993, the various Anthony Crowther games, Captive in 1990, Nightmare in 1991, Realms of the Haunting in 1997, Black Crypt, Raven Software, 1992, and Lands of Lore, Westwood Studios, 1993. Complete hybridization. By hybridizing all the existing genres, 2 games radically transformed the way we see 3D and first-person perspective. First, there's Mike Singleton's stunning, radical game Midwinter, 1989, in which the player must control several characters and organize the protection of a snowy island from an invader. Driving vehicles, RPG, shooting, strategy, infiltration and action come together naturally in an open, snow-covered world. Such a game had never been seen before, and it was perhaps the first of the sandbox-type open-world games that we see today. certain specific features, narration from multiple characters, ski simulation, time limit for completion, a map showing the enemy clan's actions, etc., some resulting directly from the Lords of Midnight, were not reused in any other games. It would be impossible to not mention the very underestimated, and almost forgotten, Corporation, 1990. Developed by Dimension Creative Designs, Bill Allen and Kevin Bulmer, Corporation aimed to be the improbable synthesis of change of pre-FPS games, RPGs. It marked not only internal future changes, but also upcoming themes, cyberpunk worlds, multiple improvements of the protagonist character, lockpicking, hacking and infiltration. Hints of System Shock and Deus Ex are there, in this bubbling concoction which is certainly not perfect, but largely ahead of its time as it preceded games such as Ultima Underworld and Wolfenstein 3D by several years. Only a large undertaking, quite distanced from that of Ultima Underworld, with a serious grey aesthetic, deprives it from the recognition it would have deserved from the general public, or its integration into the chronology of FPS games. It was both too advanced for its time in terms of concept and, as a contrast, too invested in its time through its gameplay. It was paradoxical. The Looking Glass Odyssey. There's a reason why Ken Levine with Bioshock and Raphael Colantonio with Dishonored today claim to be successors of Looking Glass. Too often, the media highlights the Deus Ex games to illustrate FPS, RPG hybrids, forgetting to mention that Looking Glass, before the adventures of Agent J.C. Denton, learned from the mistakes of the Avant-Garde Corporation to offer stronger, better managed experiences that also had better narratives. Returning to this time, this decade of unique games that today are cult classics, means also realizing that the very redefinition of the FPS experience as we knew it in this generation of consoles involves a handful of people who have run into each other and are associated with games that, in the end, had poor sales. 6 Feet Underground. Behind Ultima Underworld, the Stygian Abyss and Looking Glass lies Paul Neurath, designer of Autoduel, an adaptation of the board game Car Wars from American creator Steve Jackson. This decade of unique games that today are cult classics, means also realizing that the very redefinition of the FPS experience as we knew it in this generation of consoles involves a handful of people who have run into each other and are associated with games that, in the end, had poor sales. 014-106 6FR IUNDI C-Con Plus behind Ultima Underworld, the Stygian Abyss and Looking Glass lies Paul Neurath, designer of Autoduel, an adaptation of the board game Car Wars from American creator Steve Jackson. Dungeon Master and Corporation, in the first-person perspective that gives the player full control of the action. The developer then started to make trial games for Apple II with an engine creating a primitive and terribly slow 3D texture. After reworking this technology for IBM PCs, Neurath founded the developer Blue Sky in the spring of 1990, pairing his skills with those of Doug Church, remember this name, Dan Schmidt and Doug White. Their demonstration, released in the summer of 1990, attracted several software publishers, including Origin Systems, Ultima. The only condition required by the RPG leader was that the full 3D story of this dungeon crawler would take place in the universe of Ultima, and include classic elements from Richard Garriott's series such as the Avatar, the protagonist that the player controls beginning in the 4th installment. From Origin Systems, where he produced Wing Commander, Ultima 7 and Ultima, Worlds of Adventure 2, Martian Dreams. Warren Spector, the future producer of Deus Ex, joined the team to oversee development. The problem was that they were far from enhancing narration, and its features fell flat, giving it the feel of a forced spin-off, which is what Ultima Underworld was at the end of the day. That being said, to understand why Blue Sky's game is so important, we must look at another game that received more recognition, Wolfenstein 3D. Generally referred to as the very first. However, in 1991 id Software, known for Commander Keen, a series of 2D platform games, had already worked on first-person shooter games such as Hovertank 3D, which was less successful than Corporation, and Catacomb 3D, which to us is more essential, and practically a precursor for Ultima Underworld. This game lacked a detailed universe and real plot, but used an immersive representation method. With the protagonist's magician's hand shown in front throwing fireballs and picking up colored keys. At barely 19 years old, the wonderful John Carmack Doom, Quake, Rage, along with his associates, launched an extremely quick action maneuverable game. At the time of its release, there was nothing that really compared to Catacomb 3D. The rest of the story between Blue Sky and id Software consists solely of competition. Doug Church confirmed having presented a demonstration of Ultima Underworld to John Carmack several months prior. While Carmack claimed at the time he was able to create a faster engine, youthful arrogance was in play. Catacomb 3D and Wolfenstein 3D were certainly faster, but, on the other hand, greater than the level design of games from id proved to be sluggish, lazy, uninspired and block-like. Without its politically incorrect subject matter, beating up Hitler, you can imagine that Wolfenstein 3D wouldn't have been nearly as popular. This is because Ultima Underworld, the Stygian Abyss, was better and deeper. Games from id Software settled on flat, right-angled 2D levels from retro engineering on the id Tech engine. On the other hand, Ultima Underworld presents an abundance of quirky hallways, slopes and hills, inclines, underground rivers, altars, etc. Like in Dungeon Master, the player can grab any object, every backpack and saddlebag lying around. He can examine them and manage his inventory, and has multiple attempts to use his complex set of rooms. All of this is thanks to a set of icons, which were quite practical for the time, located on the left side of the screen. Better yet, Ultima Underworld was the very first 3D game to integrate up-down head movement. Finally, and most importantly, the game from Blue Sky is an open, free world. You can walk around continuously, retrace your steps to discover new areas you've opened with keys, talk to or fight prisoners, or use a skill like swimming to reach areas that would otherwise be unattainable. If we are to believe the statements of Doug Church in the April 2002 Computer and Video Games interview, the development had its fair share of technical issues. Several rounds of revisions were necessary to include all the designers' ideas. Numerous movement and combat system prototypes were created. It should be noted that the final version of Ultima Underworld often resembles a pile-up of concepts. Sometimes they seem poorly integrated and disconnected within the open world. One example is the text boxes that appear with each dialogue, which are disconnected from the rest of the experience. Nevertheless, what is critique-worthy in Ultima Underworld is even more so in the games that followed, in that they were taken over with these gameplay aspects without ever questioning them. Despite its shortcomings, Ultima Underworld, the Stygian Abyss enjoyed unprecedented critical success upon its release. In France, Tilt issue 100, March 1992, gave it a score of 2020, Generation 4 issue 43, April 1992, awarded it 99%. Etc. Reviews appear to be similarly high in the US. As for the background, after spending his nights on Ultima Underworld, Ken Levine, age 29, decided to contact Looking Glass. At the time he was a technical consultant on Wall Street, after a disappointing experience as a scriptwriter where his first job was to rewrite a bad romantic comedy. It was about the same time that another huge fan, Rafael Colantonio, creator of the future Arcane Studios, after filling out a form in the French magazine Joystick, left military service and was recruited by Electronic Arts to start a subsidiary in France. Scores are what they are, but they don't always help sell a game. Ultima Underworld and its sequel, which had more developed narration, are perfect examples of this. They required high-tech configurations and were therefore out of reach for many players. At the time, Origin Systems then gave up the franchise. In contrast to what happened following Dungeon Master, few clones were produced. Dreamforge created two adaptations of Ravenloft, a Gothic Advanced Dungeons & Dragons universe, in 1994 and 1995. It wasn't until The Elder Scrolls Arena, 1994, and, more importantly, The Elder Scrolls II Daggerfall, 1996. Only once the technology was available to everyone, that this real-time first-person role-based 3D game took up the challenge to achieve the result that we're familiar with today. As for Ultima Underworld 3, Paul Neurath's requests to Origin were left unanswered. And the franchise fell under the ownership of Electronic Arts, who has held on to it to this day. Shock to the system. Ultima Underworld had just been released when Blue Sky partnered with Lerner Research, a developer specializing in 3D and simulation, such as F-22 Interceptor, for which Doug Church had previously worked. The resulting developer, renamed Looking Glass, focused mainly on two areas: pure high-level aerial simulation, such as the Flight Unlimited series, and gameplay experiments based on the framework provided by Ultima Underworld. Paul Neurath, Doug Church, Warren Spector, and screenwriter-designer Austin Grossman, tired of fantasy and dungeons, decided when they were finalizing UU2 to create a game within a science fiction universe. Unwilling to settle for simply reproducing the recipes of their prior critical success, the four designers started with gameplay loop ideas started on paper, without first trying to prototype them. Above all, the team's goal was to redirect certain problematic features of Underworld, such as its choice-based dialogues, which, as mentioned, introduced excess layers of gameplay and pushed the player out of the experience. The team's decision was both simple and laden with consequences. The player starts after the catastrophe in the Citadel, which serves as a unifying location with system shock. Not a soul lives nearby, and no dialogue is possible. Grossman then integrates voice messages and emails from dead characters to give depth and body to the plot. Extra layers, of course, but they are appropriate and incorporated into the player's advancement, and naturally guide him. It is tempting to see some sort of evolution of classic written letters unearthed in RPGs. The only exceptions to this golden rule of no dialogues are the exterior commanders at the Citadel that guide the player and SHODAN, the artificial intelligence that he tries to destroy. Incidentally, System Shock also served as an opportunity for Looking Glass to improve the engine and gameplay of UU, which were necessary conditions to combat competition based solely on technological advancements and the production speed. As seen with Doom from id Software, December 1993. While Doom finally had level design up to speed with its arcade requirements, it no longer offered control of head position. It was impossible to look up or down. The player shoots ahead, and that's it. In System Shock 1994, the player can crouch, crawl, run, jump, lean left or right, hack computers, explore programs in wireframe mode, destroy cameras, heal his wounds, improve his organization with electronic chips, hit maintenance robots with a bar, shoot enemies, etc. And what's more, a rudimentary physics, a sort of simple body awareness, is applied to the player's avatar, allowing realistic body reactions. All gameplays that evolved video games since the late 1970s, all the avant-garde concepts led to this meeting and, understandably, respond to one another. And then there was the idea, considered crazy at the time, of full freedom granted to the player, which has since been adopted by all the graduates of this school. The game is, above all, an experimentation tool. The only thing left was where the rough FPS game arcade from id Software progressed to more than 1 million copies, mostly thanks to positive word of mouth and a shareware type Distribution System Shock was poorly marketed and from the beginning was sold on voiceless digital discs. Then 3 months later was available in a CD-ROM version closer to the author's vision, having reached 170,000 copies with difficulty. This was a terrible injustice, as Doug Church's game influenced the next generation of shooter games more than any other. Without System Shock, there would be no Deus Ex, Bioshock, or Dishonored, and no one would be talking about infiltration games, which would have been seen as too different. What until now had been just a sketch, a vague idea of possibilities with first-person games, came to life in System Shock, but hardly anyone acknowledges it. This is the harsh truth of the market. In the shadows. As sales for System Shock were less than satisfactory, Looking Glass made do with other projects, in particular aerial simulations. In 1996, a certain Ken Levine joined the story as he was hired after responding to a small announcement. And no matter that this Levine didn't know exactly what the job title, designer, covered. His passion and knowledge of Looking Glass precedents made him a top choice recruit. Just after his arrival, he was working on several concepts such as Better Red Than Undead, in which the player shoots zombies in a post-Chernobyl Russia, and Dark Camelot, the quest for the Holy Grail seen through the eyes of Mordred. All along, he kept the rather vague notion of offering first-person sword fights and creating an RPG world. Warren Spector, Doug Church and Paul Neurath took hold of Dark Camelot and prototyped every angle, unable to find a link that was strong enough to justify a time-consuming development. And then the idea came. To offer the player only one type of character, the thief, and establish a gameplay concentrated only on the infiltration. Based on rules of underwater simulations such as Silent Service. A submarine is invisible and powerful, and attacks. Activity feed. Filter. Stream preview. Quick actions. Sad face 4-1. McFluffy 28655. Followed you. Yesterday. CD. Iggy greater than. New Bertie star. Followed you. 8 days ago. Emmet. My chit instant. 1 my chat. ... Cell. 1. F. Silently before hiding off in the shadows. When it is discovered, it's an easy target to get rid of. Garrett, the thief protagonist in Thief, the Dark Project, follows the same discretion requirements. But the progression of the project was quickly stopped by financial problems, a direct result of prior games' semi-failures. The Austin branch, managed by Warren Spector, closed. The team joined Ion Storm and several designers were fired, including Ken Levine, who then went on to found Irrational Games. Greater Than development continued on, but many gameplay and functionality elements were removed. No more multiplayer, no more climbing, etc. In fact, the layoffs were the pretext to a dilution, a return to the actual basis of the concept, pushing the remaining team members to rethink their priorities. Artificial intelligence, guard behavior and enemies then became the major focus. As in Metal Gear Solid, which was being developed at the same time, these soldiers had a whole range of behaviors to respond to the player's actions and movements. The differences with MGS are that it so happened that Thief, the Dark Project included in the equation the presence or absence of light. That the adventure took place in the first-person perspective. That information was provided during the action, instead of in a cutscene, and that the physical elements were as realistic as possible for the time. Finally, the replay value of the Dark Project relies fully on an emerging gameplay, with no script managing the player's movements, but rather the game responding to each of his actions. With sales rising to nearly 500,000, Thief became the undisputed biggest success for the developer. 2 additional installments would later be developed. A 4th installment, called simply Thief, was developed in the offices of Eidos Montreal, the developer responsible for the Deus Ex franchise. Unfortunately, despite some good ideas, hands moving over each object that the player can interact with, Thief was a failure. This all happened while an indirect descendant, Dishonored, developed by fans of Looking Glass, stole its thunder. Descendants. Fired before the development of Thief was finished, Ken Levine, Jonathan Che and Robert Fermier founded Irrational Games in 1997. Confident in themselves and their ability to manage the entire administrative aspect of a developer's business. They signed with Multitude to create a solo mode for Fireteam, which was a mostly multiplayer game. Alas, just 2 weeks after the contract was signed, the solo mode project was cancelled and the team was left with no project and no budget. Looking Glass quickly contacted them with an idea to develop a second game, any game, around the engine of Thief, the Dark Engine. Levine and his associates quickly decided to jump into creating System Shock 2. Logically, this second installment revisits the concept of rebellious AI, SHODAN, an enclosed space, the spaceship von Braun, and the mix of RPG, FPS, but it made it all more natural, more fluid and easy to understand. However, System Shock 2 let itself complicate its RPG approach, in particular by offering 3 starting categories: Main, Soldier, Navy, Technician, and OSA Agent, Telekinesist. The player must choose one for each of the 3 years of his avatar's training. This allows the creation of numerous characters with extremely varied powers and characteristics. Finally, while the horrific element of being trapped was already present, System Shock 2 made it one of its narrative engines. The player is constantly reminded of his isolation through metallic and mutant voices echoing in the halls of the von Braun, the constant darkness, the alarms sounding and the techno-atmospheric turn-by-turn soundtrack. Ken Levine decided to draw inspiration from the structure of Joseph Conrad's Heart of Darkness, which he infused again 10 years later in Bioshock, and which has since been adapted in Spec Ops: The Line. The final enemy is always in contact with the player, talking to him, lying to him, and sometimes tricking him by acting as an ally. So twisted. With System Shock, the player, the final enemy is always in contact with
Okay, we'll make a short break now. Few minutes. out about this place. There is so the level is quite big, so what we can do, yeah, we'll create some alley. We'll create some alley here. Okay, to player just to see, to enjoy, but he will go over there. Okay, now we got it, but we'll do it after the break. So it can be a graveyard or yeah. Okay, we'll be right back. I got an idea.
It isn't love, but suffering and change. When echoes move places and shores, underground wind lulls the sleeping ones to sleep. Entrances guarded by two silencers and a rock. It isn't love, but suffering and war. Of skulls where stars that once shone rot. Becoming voice in time I disappear, I wake. Flower greater than the night, wave with no keepsake. Above my head the stars that light, whose route I changed, and the sight. Oh, boat full of oblivion and wind with no flaw. Heavy shadows of some other world that falls. After death, robbed sight and an empty name. It isn't love, but suffering and change. When echoes move places and shores, underground wind lulls, but suffering and war. Of skulls where stars that once shone rot. Becoming voice in time I disappear, I wake. Flower greater than the night, wave with no keepsake. Above my head the stars that light, whose route I changed, and the sight. Oh, boat full of oblivion and wind with no flaw. Heavy shadows of some other world that falls.
We're back. Sorry if it took a little bit longer, but yeah, we need those breaks. We're here and let us see. Of course. Arcadia and Farmers Market. I mean, I'm watching that because of that map. Let me see. Yeah, there it is. So farmer market, there is some graveyard, and this looks also nice here. Yeah, here, graveyard leading to crematorium. We'll say that. Graveyard leading to crematorium. Let's just put it so we don't forget. Or we can even do it in Photoshop. Let's just create new HD. So just type graveyard. Let it be like 50 or I don't know, 100, 200. So graveyard, comma, leading to okay. Now we just need to create like old let me check. I need all those images. Uh-huh. Sorry, just need to try to find that. I have collection of and I keep forgetting where I put it. Oh man. Bioshock level design. No, that's and one more place to check, and we're moving on. I need to find it, but not here. Books. I mean, it's in Deckard Evolution, I think. Ooh. It's in this book. It's those places. Arcadia. So many details, you see. So after the game, like, we should do the book. Okay. The signs, like we have it. We have it here also. In that book. This kind of.
This is where birds in your heart yelled back and forth at each other, and the winds blew over worn-out landscapes. This is where living ate their heart to survive, and death were less and less dead. This is where everyone has equally inhaled bitter
Let's
cruelty
just
of one place and time.
can we
I recite
copy
your
this
nights, my
image
day,
and
music of
paste
your
it?
being as a constellation to the distant shapes into unknown shapes that follow their stars of black fire. In the
Nice.
ground, your dream changed my words shiny outside, lost on the inside. In the ground your dream evaporates, sounding depths of crystal in the world. Too long is the path from one to another word, for your song without any words. Only he in the forest behind the grave, Swan has isolated himself
But
in his bed.
really, all we need is old
scent in the wind.
old sign.
He grew into shadow, but didn't want
And
it for himself.
the problem is now we're stuck with details. We need to move faster. So
he left his blood glow and fell asleep between eyes in the sun. Dead heads before the empty landscape.
really need,
even deaf forests of the hill have
okay,
descended
something
into
like
gold.
this.
He who called for their only face from the ground, from the stone, knows what the pain is. That's who sees it on the other shore instead of the forest's noise grows. Absence blooms, fields sings, shadow fragile birds in the desert that empties sun and makes worlds similar to the oblivion. They stayed in the mountains where snow and thought last. Their flower is different in its colors.
That's the one, and the other is
The hills is mixed with the last year's snow. Many stayed at the lonely peaks, some said they're dead. I wish that everything that I write I rewrite from the eyelids of your eyes closed. Revolution in which past suffers for its lying hours and one disease finishes history, before all in the ground turns into lie all except your skeletons, for which the battle between the opinion and the hunger lasts in the night with the starry grain that changes words into shape. Birds over
okay.
nothingness and sun
Work on this one.
It is their legacy. Words are refusing to come back. I borrow their thought and star above the grave to my night enamored with their dead, with their marble spheres, into their grave which despises grave diggers and refuses to move from the world into afterlife, where hunchback emptiness argues with the nameless bones. Before your blood in which stars fall clean, loveless love, sunless sun, as a fire with no flame under eyelashes, instead of the lost word which has the rights to all the stars in a being that wakes emptiness. I'm windrose signed under the dawn, says the bird, put into sleep into landscape that ascends. A blind man climbed the hill and wept, how can I find them if they can't see me? Ye reign long and endless on the last day of the year. I sit in my head, and write. While skies rehearse in rainstorm, I'm thinking, my eye and the picture that I look at still aren't what I see. Air splashed in blood. Only what we gave we truly had. Dead have reached themselves, while we last in one detail, whose meaning is unknown. Music that had dripped out of our grateful fingers as blood, may it
But
stop
really
in
this
from
one,
words, and may it be the beginning and the end of the world which would have their name and our hands here where history spoke out
what
loud,
if we
here
just
where the
add
dead
this guy? Or opposite, add those two to him.
blood glow here where earth and water and air live off with their death here where we call for their face from the stone here where we recite their night to my day here where from their forehead I transcribe my poem.
Let's see what we can find there. So old ads, and let it say that we can this guy is good, but we didn't say that we want a large HD. this one. Yeah. Okay. Just say old posters. One, two. Yeah, I really need to speed it up because we got like 20 minutes. Let's import what we just downloaded, some free images, and this is the same. No, we'll use this one, but it's too big to be true. There is no point it to be. If it's like even 2000 with 2000, it's too much. 1500. And let's just add our, I mean, that title. I close it. I didn't want. This one, edit there. Okay, so here we'll add the title. It will be red like the same, like this one. First we need to color it to the same color, and then we could also cut some edges there. So the letters red, or that same color, it should be like this one. color. Okay. Just bigger. Some antique or Gothic, maybe if they're okay. The ones below will be black, and when we move it, I said below, when we move it, it will be similar. Okay. And we need some arrow. Pass pored aletides with graveyard leading. Huh. Okay, and this one also. This one, man. Say leading to crematorium. Let's add it. We lost too much time just on one image, but yeah, in the next stream we should set up the goal, like to finish this part of level or whatever. Let's put this in. We got 13 minutes, so yeah, to plan. Oh, I hate when I thought that I saved it the same folder. I didn't. Yeah, here. Sorry, but I cannot see it as PNG. Now it's there. Leading to crematorium. Okay. I cannot see. Here it is. Duplicate. here. Okay. So it will be here somewhere. So there can be that graveyard with just simple walls. Or it can be need some lights. It will be green. We could also put those, if those are like two-sided. Let's see. Can you do it here? It's not two-sided. What's this? What I just clicked? Now it is, yeah? What is this? True? Aha, two-sided. Wow, now we get the problem. Maybe not. I'll let this one also be two-sided. Save. Okay. Got 6 minutes, but yeah, here will be the graveyard. I like this. Those, it's like light. Those line, that line is great. So yeah, we'll just be able to see it through maybe window, or I don't know. There'll be some teleport or secret. But actually from there go around over there, and yeah. Need walls and a lot of other elements. But if we put this here, let's color differently those. So if it's the other one is more like red, this can be like more like greenish, and this also. Okay. So yeah, we started with this corridor, a lot of to be done. And what can we also do is just build a wall, I mean, on top, a roof. Here or here, I don't know. That can also be an option. So yeah, graveyard will be here, market will be there, and so on, but we need some corridors. Yeah. Let's add a last thing for now. Just like cylinder. Make it taller much. and use the same material as in here. If we can click on it here, okay. Also that kind of minimalistic style with that kind of light. And that's it. Yeah, those can be also two-sided. I mean, this duplicate, two-sided here and here. Save. No, this one. And just select those all. And add this one. So now we have it on both sides. And yes, we need to finish, work on other stuff, but yeah, that will be our approach. And you see here is the like central thing. This can be like, I don't know, we'll see for like this building. If we select everything which is connected with that building, meshes, building. Now is 50. Yeah, it's not changing much, but I would like to go without it because there is too much some elements that we don't need. Yeah, it's becoming but we are far from there. When we finish, we'll know how far this level, we'll know far we are from releasing it. Okay, thanks and see you later, maybe with some music. Have a good night.